I'd like to welcome everybody who's arrived today with us. On behalf of Waterford Education Support Centre, I would like to welcome you to our interview this morning as part of the Inspiring Ireland Inspiring Student Series. This morning, Fidelma Healy-Eames, Dr. Fidelma Healy-Eames, who's here with us, will interview Dr. Mark Rowe. Living in Galway, Fidelma Healy-Eames is Director of Study and Careers, specialising in teacher education, well-being and career guidance, and author of the new book, The Gifted Learner, How to Help. In May 2021, she founded the Inspiring Ireland Inspiring Student Interview Series. Since then, together with education centres across Ireland, she has live-streamed interviews with many well-known and famous people. And based on that belief that conversation can change a life, the aim of the series is to inspire young people to enable them to realise, like our famous guests, that they too can create their own futures. We are delighted to welcome her very special guest today, Dr. Mark Rowe, who is a native of Waterford, and as we are hosting this, we are very proud. He's founder of the Waterford Health Park, which is in the former grounds of the Presentation Convent, where I went to school myself, primary school and secondary school. The beautiful award-winning building, which is opposite Welsh Park, another landmark here in Waterford for GAA, not only houses Dr. Mark Rowe's medical practice, but also the Lifestyle Be Well Clinic. Welcome to you both, Fidelma and Dr. Mark Rowe.
Thank you very much, Assumpta, and good morning, everybody. And we have a precious 30 minutes together. And like Assumpta said, I just want to thank Waterford Education Support Centre for hosting us today. And yes, I am delighted, teachers, children, students, to say that our special guest today is Dr. Mark Rowe. Mark, you are a well-known medical doctor and author of several books on health, happiness and well-being. And this is just his latest one. It's called The Vitality Mark. So the name is in there as well. And we were about to start with a little clip there, Mark, from an inspirational TED talk you gave. And in the absence of that, perhaps if you would tell the students and teachers listening what the TED talk was about. It mentioned lifestyle as medicine. What exactly that means, and how were you selected, Mark, to do a TED talk?
Yeah, thanks, Fidelma. I'm really honoured and delighted to be here and to have an opportunity to share some of my own ideas about positive health and, as you rightly said, lifestyle as medicine, which is a really simple idea that our everyday habits can make a real difference to our health and well-being, not just in terms of our long-term health, in terms of staying well and not getting chronic health conditions, but our everyday experience of feeling good in the moment in terms of how we think, in terms of how we feel, our ability to focus, to concentrate, and to really be ourselves in the world. And it turns out that these habits include exercise and movement. I call exercise the greatest pill of all. Simply getting up off your chair and walking or moving for 10 minutes will change your emotional state, dissolving stress hormones like cortisol, bringing on positivity neurochemicals like serotonin, enabling you to feel more confident, feel more creative, and feel more positive. You know, the other habits in lifestyle as medicine would include getting a really good night's sleep, eating good, healthy food choices, lots of color and lots of plant-based options, learning to build great friendships and relationships, and learning to recharge from stress. So these are very, very old ideas. They go back thousands of years, but it's bringing them into the 21st century and really understanding that for each and every one of us, we can all choose to become active participants in our own well-being. In other words, we can take ownership of our own lives in terms of the very small little micro moment decisions we take each and every day, and they can make a real difference.
Okay, so Mark, if I was to go into your practice, and everyone listening here today has a family doctor, if I was to go into your practice today feeling miserable and with maybe just a common cold, but you know, feeling really miserable, what might you say to me? Would you be giving me a pill? or a tablet, for example?
Maybe it would depend. But if I thought it was just a cold caused by a virus, I'd be really encouraging you to take really good care of yourself for a few days, get some rest, maybe eat some vegetable soup, and maybe take some paracetamol if you had a temperature. But I would also be interested in the habits that you take to support and strengthen your immune system. So I'd be very interested, for example, do you bring your mobile phone to bed with you? Because bringing the mobile phone to bed is something that a lot of pupils and teachers and people in general are doing nowadays. And of course, the blue light from the mobile phone destroys your sleep quality, which has a negative impact on your immune system. It has a negative impact on your stress levels, on your attention, on your focus, on your ability to feel well. So as a very simple example, I'd be checking into that. And I'd be encouraging you to leave your phone downstairs, to have a wind down time at night. And really, when you are better again, to look at really taking good care of yourself in terms of getting some exercise and movement and fresh air each day.
Okay. So, Mark, today you're a really well-known doctor and you're recognized internationally by various bodies for your eminence in the field of lifestyle medicine. But the boys and girls listening to us today, and one of the main features of this interview series is that everyone we interview, they were once a child and a young person, like the young people listening to us today. So could we just maybe learn a little bit about yourself growing up? What was the young Mark like? What did you love? What were your interests? Where did you come in your family?
I was the eldest of two. I've one younger brother, Coleman. And growing up, I mean, I loved school, but I loved playing. I mean, it was very carefree times back then. You know, we used to spend hours every evening playing on the estate I grew up in, you know, playing cowboys and Indians or playing football. There was very little traffic back then. I loved playing soccer at school. I loved tennis, all sports really. I always loved watching hurling.
You like team and individual sport.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about friendships, Mark? You touched on it briefly there. I believe that friendship is very important for well-being and for feeling good inside yourself. Maybe would you agree with that? And did you have a friend or a group of friends, or did you ever experience difficulty in that area?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, a massive study that's been going on in Harvard University since the 1930s has shown that strong friendships are probably the leading indicator of your well-being long term. And it's really, really, really important because we're human beings, we're social creatures. Growing up, I had a group of friends where I lived. We used to hang out together, and at school, I didn't have any one individual friend per se. But I mean, friendship is valuable, and we have to invest in our relationships, and relationships are never sort of static or set in stone. So we have to keep on nurturing our friendships and our relationships, and it is a really good thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Mark, because sometimes when we have a friend, we're shocked when that friendship changes, or when they maybe make a new friend and appear to leave the other person behind. And I suppose another thing is that wherever people gather, we know that there's the potential for bullying, Mark, and feeling left out. Were you ever teased or bullied in school? I mean, as I say, you're into health and well-being, and you know the importance of all these things, but did it ever happen to you, and how did you handle it?
Well, I was bullied at school. I remember, you know, in primary school, kids used to sing "Row, row, row the boat gently down the stream," and I was teased a bit with that. And I suppose, look, as any 7 or 8 year old, how does any 7 or 8 year old deal with these things? Looking back, I'm sure it upset me at the time, but you get on with these things, and eventually, I suppose what I learned was that when people don't get the reaction they're looking for, they quickly move on to something else. It doesn't have the same energy or attention. I remember in secondary school, I was assaulted at one stage by a younger kid who was going around picking on guys, and in a gang, and that was quite upsetting at the time. But I remember telling my parents, and the yearmaster was very good, and that boy was subsequently expelled, so he wasn't able to do it to anybody else. So yeah, I think it's part and parcel of life. Life has setbacks for all of us, and it's not a plain sailing. Nothing is.
Yes.
And but I think
that was a setback, like that was a massive shock to get to be
was
in any way hit or assaulted,
yeah,
or
it was
verbally or physically. What's really touching me there is that, number one, you told your parents, so it's so key to report it, and number two, the school took action to protect you.
Yeah, my yearmaster was very good, and they dealt with it. I felt at the time I felt it couldn't have been dealt with better.
Okay.
But it is important to stand up for yourself in life, whatever way you can, whether it means just sharing your story with somebody else. That can be the most important thing you do. Don't carry that burden yourself. And you were talking about being about friendships, but it's so important in life, Fidelma, and everybody listening, to be a friend to yourself, to treat yourself with the same patience and empathy and kindness as you would a good friend. And if you are kind to yourself, if you value yourself, you will have your own standards, and you're not going to allow other people treat you disrespectfully.
That's a beautiful message to give to our young people today, and to our teachers who work so hard in this whole area, Mark, of social personal health education, building school climate and well-being, just to be a friend to yourself. Thank you for that. Going back to the actual learning then, Mark, were there subjects you loved, and were there subjects you maybe didn't like as much? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'm a doctor, but I loved science in school. I was so interested in how things worked, whether it was the human body or the idea of planets in the universe and gravity and things like that. I just thought it was really interesting how things worked. And, I loved that sense of curiosity, being curious about how things came together and worked, was really fascinating for me. I was good at school. I suppose looking back, I was naturally good at school, but I didn't always feel that confident at school. I mean, I remember in maths, and I used to do very well in maths. I struggled hugely with confidence, and I felt I was always going to fail the next exam. I had this kind of sense of, I think they sometimes describe it as kind of a bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And even though I was getting good marks, I sort of felt, well, that really isn't me at all, and I'll be exposed the next time. So doing well versus feeling good in yourself can be completely different. And if I was back again, I think it would have been wonderful if I'd had more encouragement in terms of my own self-confidence and that, because I think that would have been enormously helpful at the time.
You're touching on something really interesting there, Mark, because just because the kid is doing well, we don't know how they're feeling necessarily internally. And as teachers, and indeed parents, we may misunderstand that they also need affirmation. Like as Sumta mentioned at the outset, I've just done a book on the gifted learner. And this, what you'd call there, the imposter syndrome, comes up quite a bit amongst high achieving kids. They always think others nearly know more than them, and that they don't know enough. And it comes back to that bit about, maybe I'm not good enough, So thanks a million for sharing that there. So I guess we're moving on now to how you made your decision to be a doctor. And I think you've touched on it there, that you love science. And how did you decide on that in the end? Was there anyone that really influenced you, Mark?
Well, my late granddad, who I never met, I mean, he died when my mum was quite young, had been a doctor. So I always grew up with that story in my family. So, from the age I was a very young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years of age, I always said to anyone that ever asked that I was going to be a doctor. I was really interested, I suppose, in science, as I've said, and I was always interested in people. I found people fascinating. So I think that's what really attracted me to family medicine, which is very much all about dealing with people, and people in the context of their lives and their communities and so on. So I was always, I never thought I was going to do anything else, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you're lucky in that respect, because this can be a big issue for some
Mm.
kids choosing a career. About a third of kids know from a very early age what they want to be, and you're obviously one of them. But then you have another third, Mark, sometimes that are like between, and then you also have the young people that don't have a clue initially. So I'm just acknowledging that because we have so many people listening today, and that everyone is at a different place in their journey. And good career guidance for that reason is so important, just so that it's kind of normalized, however you're
Yeah.
feeling at a given point in time.
But what I would say, Fidelma, was like back in my day, there was very much a pressure in a sense that when you were 17 or 18, you had to know what you were about. Whereas really, the world has changed in so many positive and good ways. And I would say to any young person out there now, you know, there is no rush. There's limitless ways to do and become anything you want to be, and always believe in yourself. And, you know, you don't have to have it all figured out. It's just taking one step forward. And
absolutely, really wise words, Mark, because, you know, this Generation Z, I think is what we call it now, it's predicted they'll probably have 17 different jobs in the course of their lifetime. So, you know, wherever you're at, and you're moving on to the next stage for you, whatever is right for you. So that was interesting about your granddad. I suppose back to your job, because your work today, I had the good fortune to do a course with Mark before Christmas. And as a teacher myself, and now working in teacher education, I just felt we got so many useful tips from you, Mark. And you might just tell us a little bit now about happiness and its link with health. And are there ways, Mark, to switch on happiness? Like, teachers are very, very busy people, but they also have the privilege of being face to face with young people that matter to us all and are the future of our country. So are there ways to switch on happiness?
Well, the answer is there are. I mean, you know, whether you use the word happiness or well-being or inner contentment, about 40% of that is determined by the things you do or don't do each and every day. And really, you know, it really connects very strongly with health, because when you feel more positive and when you are able to build up that emotional bank account of positivity on the inside, it helps you to dissolve stress. And feelings of stress and tension and anxiety and worry and concern aren't good for us. It's not good for us to feel that way for too long. Temporarily it can be fine, but for too long, all those stress hormones can damage our health and make us feel bad in ourselves. So building these everyday habits can really make a big difference to how we feel. And I think, you know, there are so many ways that you can build and enhance inner happiness, and perhaps one of the best of these is simply the habit of gratitude, because gratitude is all about wanting what you have as opposed to having what you want. And I consider it an antidote to feelings of needless negativity and toxic stress. It simply isn't possible to feel grateful on the one hand and tense, anxious or hostile on the other.
Okay.
And a great way to build the habit of gratitude is simply to, you know, write 3 things down. I call it WWW, what went well, 3 things you feel good about, 3 things you feel grateful for. I mean, for me as a doctor in the world of health, there are literally hundreds of things about health alone that you could feel grateful for. I mean, just think about being able to walk to school this morning. Think about being able to eat on your own. Think about being able to go to the bathroom on your own. These are very, very basic things that we all tend to just take for granted.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, Mark, that I think you shared at that course that just writing 3 things down once a week, that there's studies to show that it can increase your happiness by something like 25%.
Over 10 weeks. Yeah, once a week for 10 weeks.
Okay.
You know, a weekly gratitude practice. So with a lot of these habits, doing it every day can bring a sense of monotony into it. So maybe just, you know, doing it 2 or 3 times a week, figuring out what's most natural for you. But as well as, you know, a written gratitude practice, I'm a big fan of what I call appreciation. And appreciation is really about appreciating people. And a great question for anybody listening as well. Who can you appreciate today? Might be somebody, might be your mom at home who made you your breakfast, or it might be a teacher at school who's been kind to you, or it might be a colleague or a friend. Because, you know, being more friendly and being more appreciative, it's a wonderful way to build friendship, build connection, and it also makes you feel better too on the inside.
Yeah.
Choosing to really appreciate. And I'm great. I appreciate you, Fidelma, today for having me and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Share my messages with the students and teachers in Ireland.
Well, I just felt they were worth hearing, Mark. And that's why you are our special guest today. But, you know, I think we don't see what goes on inside our bodies. So am I understanding you right, Mark, that by just focusing on things I'm grateful for, by appreciating something or someone, that I change myself internally and I release different hormones as a result? Could you just explain that piece? Because I'm conscious of the age groups that could be listening.
Yeah, so when you feel grateful, when you appreciate people, and when you write down and build that gratitude habit, what you are doing in the moment is you are reducing feelings of stress and you're building feelings of relaxation. So that's the opposite to stress. And when you build feelings of relaxation, you feel more open, you feel more creative, you feel more like the real you. And you also bring on different chemicals like oxytocin, which is the chemical of connection, dopamine, which is the chemical of motivation, serotonin, which is the chemical of happiness and feel good, and other chemicals as well. And the net effect of all of these chemicals working together is that you feel more positive, you feel more relaxed, you feel more present, you feel more engaged, you feel more like yourself. And that's good. It
certainly is good. And, you know, Mark, like a lot of the teachers listening today will be doing various practices with their students, maybe even like mindfulness. We have movement breaks sometimes between classes. Or teachers are so busy. That's the biggest challenge. And a lot of the time we know that the investment in our young people is a key time, but then sometimes it comes back on the teacher all the time, and back on the classroom, and back on the school to solve all the problems. So the little nuggets you're giving us are really crucial. I think you mentioned one about, maybe two that I recall, the symbol of the hand, Mark, about the shake hands. You might mention that one, and also maybe the mindful 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's the simplicity of the message that really appeals.
Yeah, so in my book, The Vitality Mark, I use the symbol of the hand to represent what I call the hand of vitality. So if you look at your hand, Fidelma, you'll see you've got 4 fingers.
Yeah.
And those 4 fingers represent the 4 separate elements that make up your well-being. So starting with the little finger is your emotion. That's how you feel in yourself. Okay. The next finger then is your body, what your physical energy is like. The middle finger is like your spiritual well-being, which is like your sense of purpose and your sense of connection to the world around you. And the index finger is your mind. It's all about how you think about things and your ability to recharge from stress. And they're all interconnected, those 4 fingers, those 4 elements. And then finally, if you reach out your hand to shake hands and connect with somebody else, you'll see the thumb points back to you. And that's a reminder that you have to take good care of yourself, and that taking good care of yourself is the starting point to take better care of anybody else. And then my mindful 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is just a little, very simple in the moment exercise that anybody can do. It's just to think, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Now, you know, it might be just tasting your own breath, as it were, or if you're
saliva.
outdoors tasting the fresh air. But the idea that you're using all of your different senses for a mindful 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it can be a wonderful in the moment exercise to build that sense of mindful presence and really bring you back into the present moment.
Yeah, and bringing them back into the present moment so that, you know, all that stuff that sometimes we have to park and leave outside, it's, as you said, if it's helping us release those happy hormones, well, it's worth a lot. I suppose I have a phrase, Mark: happy teacher, happy child. The students listening will know how demanding teachers' lives are, and how, I suppose, how much there is on the curriculum, how much they need to get done. Are there ways that the pupils or students could support their teachers' health and well-being?
Well, I think teachers have played such an important role in society. And I think if you're a pupil in a class, you know, one of the best ways you can help your teacher is to be kind, to be present, and to a term I like to use is, you know, just give somebody the benefit of the doubt, because I think giving someone the benefit of the doubt is sometimes the glue that greases the wheel of relationships. And you know, nothing and no one is perfect, but just to be kind and present and patient. And I think that can go a long way towards helping a teacher.
Fabulous. Well, you're giving us wonderful advice there about be kind to yourself, be a friend to yourself, be kind to others, you know. And it's that while as young people, I mean, and I'm reflecting back on myself, we always heard those messages, but I don't believe for a minute that I understood the science behind it or the inner changes that would go on. I mean, obviously you'd have feeling of happiness and sadness, but you didn't really know what triggered them, you know? So I think this is very, very useful to get that, the scientific piece as well, that contributes to that. We're going to begin to finish up. And Mark, we'll just have a quick fire round just to get a quick one-word reaction, if you wouldn't mind, to a few things. COVID-19.
Over.
Ooh, that's good coming from a doctor. That's great.
I hope.
Thank you. And I hope, exactly. The Ukraine.
Turmoil.
Ireland.
Home.
Hope.
Every day.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Assumpta, maybe is there something you'd like to ask at this point, or any comment you'd like to make? And before we begin.
I had asked, you know, I just put into the chat if people wanted to, you know, comment. I know a lot of people are working with classes, so it might be very difficult. But I know as a former class teacher, those there's a query there for Mark, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Those very practical steps, Mark, are so important. I have used the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in the classroom context, and it does work, and it even works for myself. Just that grounding experience you get from it. If I go back to our IT glitch at the beginning, certainly the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 come in handy there too. So those kind of things, the hand of vitality is fabulous. And I think that visual for the younger people among us today, all of those are great takeaways, Mark, and thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, and did you say there is a question?
There's just a question to Mark, just if you give talks to schools, and that'll tell you how much you've impressed the people here, your audience here, but perhaps they can contact you individually on that.
They can, yeah. I give talks to all sorts of groups, and always delighted to be of service and value if we can make it happen.
And Mark is on Instagram at Dr. Mark Rowe, just DrMark ROWE.
Yeah,
okay.
I try and put up something positive every day to try and encourage and inspire people. So
yes, and it's very, very useful. And actually, that's also a very good little thing for teachers just to tune into with their classes on a daily basis to see what is the quote of the day that you've chosen. So look, we're going to finish up, and really grateful again to Waterford Education Support Centre for hosting this. And as we begin to close, Mark, I suppose you've given us lots of tips, but is there one single message you'd like to leave with our young people today?
I think more than anything, Fidelma, it's believe in yourself. You know, nobody has the right to say that you can't achieve anything in your life, never stop believing. You know, the road from A to B, it's rarely smooth or straightforward, but if you believe in yourself, you can do and become anything that you want to be in your life, if you're willing to not believe in yourself firstly, and also, you know, take those actionable steps every day to move you in that direction. Great question to ask yourself. What's the smallest thing I can do today that if I do it will move me in the direction of the person I want to become? Because it's all about those small micro choices we make each day. And that's how we build it, one step at a time.
Give us that question again, Mark. What's the smallest thing?
What's the smallest thing I can do today that if I do it, can move me in the direction of the person I want to become?
Wonderful. I'm writing that down too for myself.
Because sometimes the big plan and the long-term goal, it seems so daunting that we never start. The fear stops us. Whereas if we break it down into the smallest thing we choose to do, that enables us to take that small little baby step forward.
Absolutely.
That's all we need to do. Then tomorrow will take care of itself.
And that message is good for us all. And finally, Mark, the students listening today have had this opportunity and privilege because of their teachers and the schools that have signed up to listen to you. And Mark, would you have a final word for the teachers listening?
I would. It's you know, to recognize what an important role you play. And you're not just teachers teaching people, you have the potential to inspire the next generation of leaders in this country. And, you know, realize that ability to inspire others is a wonderful privilege and gift and responsibility, and own it and step forward. And together we'll build a healthier future and a better society for all of us.
Thank you for that, Mark. And I think, thank you, teachers. There's no words to follow that. So thank you, everybody, for listening to and tuning in to the Inspiring Ireland, Inspiring Students series. To Mark Rowe, Goramahagat, and to Waterford Education Support Centre, and to Sumta O'Neill, I'm very grateful. Slán Awalia, have a good day, everybody, and let's get practicing some of those wonderful tips. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.